How many of you would say you prefer spontaneous vacations? Like, head in the car, see what happens. That's my in-laws. Sometimes they'll just drive. They have sort of an idea of where they want to go, but they'll just drive and drive. Hannah talks about when she was a kid, one of her favorite memories was sitting at the intersection just outside of her neighborhood and the whole family getting into this heated debate over, do we go left or right? And that would determine the whole rest of the trip. And she loved it. It was fun. But as adults, we like to plan. I put into Gemini. I said, give me the best hour-by-hour breakdown to make the most of my vacation. And man, it came up with some really ridiculous stuff. At one point, it says, the way I put it in, it had me and my friend doing all the things, and Hannah would sit back with Ivy the entire time, and it said, no one's left behind. But just have Hannah and the baby sit back during the entire trip. So we had to work it out. We didn't follow completely. We used our minds, but we were very detailed. How many of you guys like the details when it comes to vacation? You want to plan ahead, make the most of it. Yeah. What, someone in between? In between? Some room for spontaneity, but plan out some things? Okay. So for vacations, we don't have to plan a lot. We need our reservations, maybe the plane ticket. We need a few things. And vacation just sort of happens. We're just looking forward to time off. But that's not how a vocation works. Vocations, we spend years preparing for. We work really hard for our vocation. Some of you went to school for your vocation. Some of you went to school again for your vocation. I remember sitting down with a friend who was working toward his medical degree, and he's like, you want me to show you what the test is like? Oh, man. The test to get into, what he shows is like, there's a screen where there's all this stuff you have to read, and it's for one question, and you've got to come up with the right diagnostic based off of the limited information, and you have 1 minute for that screen. I'm like, I wouldn't read half of it. I wouldn't have time. And I think that's how you're supposed to skim it enough to be able to make the best diagnostic. And he's like, yeah, there's about 1,200 of these questions. It's just on and on. Man, that's someone who prepared. Some of you like to prepare for a vacation, but you have to prepare for a vocation. Here's why I bring that up. Because when we think of the afterlife, when we think of our life after this, when we think of heaven, we think of it as a vacation. You got the ticket? Good. It'll be all right. But what if we started thinking of it like a vocation? So I learned this from Gavin. So recently after Hannah and I got married, her cousin got leukemia. This, barely a teenager. And for the last few weeks of his life, he studied heaven like my friend studied in medical school. Because he saw it as something real. And he didn't want to just treat it like flippant, oh, this would be nice. But to him, it was a reality. And I wonder if we saw heaven like a reality and we learned about the specifics, what that would do in our lives. If we treated it more like a vocation, if we realized we're not preparing for an eternal vacation, we're preparing for an eternal vocation. And that goes against a lot of what maybe we've grown up with in our concept of heaven. Our concept of heaven is definitely rest. What do we say? Rest in peace. We pray that your spirit would be at peace and at rest. And we imagine being in the clouds with harps and little babies with wings fooling around and everything, and maybe the pearly gates and then the road of gold and all that, and we get this concept it's going to be, we're moving into a permanent vacation home, right? But what if that's not the full picture? How would that change things for us? So this is my main point. We're going to be talking about this the rest of the morning here. We're preparing for an eternal vocation, not vacation. Not vacation. So the Apostle Creed ends with, I believe in the resurrection. Why do I see it as a vocation? Because of the resurrection. If it wasn't for the resurrection, maybe I would think that it was just a vacation. It was all about us kind of getting the rest, well-earned break. But we have a resurrection. And so we believe that Jesus was raised. Easter Sunday, we believe Jesus broke through the grave, but we believe that he broke through the grave so that we could break through and walk out of our graves. Here's the thing, when Jesus returns, we're not going to be wondering it, I don't think. What I imagine is that grave sites all over the world will be erupting the minute, because we don't just believe in one resurrection, we believe that that one resurrection is a promise and a guarantee for many resurrections. That he was raised so that we can be raised. And if we're resurrected, do you know, that tells us something about what our future is going to look like. At the very least, we're going to have physical bodies. What might that mean? So, we're going to be scanning through 1 Corinthians 15. This is the resurrection chapter of the Bible. And one of the first things I want you to think about is how Paul talks about our resurrection. He says, when you sow, some of you guys just got done sowing. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be. So you don't take full-on corn husks. Is that the name? Corn husks? And you don't bury that. What do you bury? You just have a seed. How big is a seed for corn? Is that like the grain of corn? Yeah. I just got to confirm these things. I never assume knowledge with this stuff. So you sow something that's not the full thing, but you sow something that is smaller. You sow a seed, and you get out wheat or something else. So we're thinking seeds and wheat. We're thinking acorns and trees. You don't sow a tree. You don't try to bury an entire tree underground. You put the little seed in. We know that, right? But Paul says this is how it's going to be. Our current bodies are going to be like a dead seed that gets sown in the ground. So we don't just bury our bodies, we're planting our bodies. There's going to be a resurrection. The resurrection is a harvest. This is the picture here. And so in this picture, I think one of the biggest things Paul wants us to see is that there will be some things that remain and other things that change. Okay? So within the seed, within the grain, there is the full potential for the wheat or the tree. It's all there. It's the same substance. So there is something of when we cross from our current life to our resurrected life that will continue. We're the same people, just like the seed is the same. But just like the seed is transformed, we will be transformed. And so how a lot of theologians will talk about this is the already, but not yet. Things are already the way they're going to be, but they're also going to be different. There's continuity and discontinuity. There's what stays the same and what will be forever changed. It is important for us to put the right things in the right categories, because so often in my picture is like, okay, I need the ticket, I need to make sure I get in. If I get in, I don't have to worry about anything else. But what if there are some things about me right now that are actually going to cross over? Then it actually matters more how I live my life and the person I'm becoming now. So he goes on, but God gives it a body as he has determined, and to each kind of seed he gives its own body. So we're all seeds here. And our future resurrected body is determined by our current seed, who we are right now. There's an already. There's an already. So, let me see where I want to go with this. No, we'll go to that later. Okay, so what I want you to imagine is, I don't do this. Has anyone ever, worked on a car before? Who's worked on a car? Who's worked on a car? A little bit? You're laughing, Jim. Do you work on a car? What? You won't admit that you worked on... Okay. Show of hands, nice and high, if you've ever worked on a car. Okay. How about this? Have you ever restored a car? Taken a classic? And, okay, good. So if Jesus were around today, I believe he would be restoring cars. Because that's the thing Jesus likes to do. I, on the other hand, have to grow in that area. Because I just like throwing things away. If it's old, if it's going to take work to fix, I'm like, I'm the IKEA generation here. We can get a new one fairly cheap, it's done. Throw it out, on with the new. Thing is, when you throw it out, then the furniture company wins, right? And you buy something new. See, when it comes to the earth, Jesus wants to restore, not trash. Because if Jesus trashes, here's what happens. Death wins. So the way the Bible pictures sin and death is that it's this tyrant that's trying to take over God's good kingdom. And so God's not going to just let sin and death take it and have reign over everything and then just start new with a new one. No. What 1 Corinthians is what I was looking for. I don't have the verse for it, but it says death is swallowed up in victory. Death will be fully defeated as this world gets fully restored. So it's like working on a car. He's a good craftsman and can restore what's been broken instead of trashing it and starting new. So there's an already. There's an already. When you think about yourself, when you think of your soul, when you think of your body, it's not like it gets put away and then there's something new. There's something of this that's going to continue. We know that. What? With Jesus' body, he still had the scars. And so what does that mean for us? Why does that matter? That means whatever skills you learn now, you could be using that. Whatever you're building now, the way you're impacting the world now, will be influenced by. So 15 years ago, I learned this little goofy little tool for Bible studies. And when I first started, I thought this was kind of basic. And since then, I thought, I use this all the time. I mean, man, there's not a Bible study or even a sermon that I give without kind of having this in the background. And when I first started, I thought, that was kind of cheesy. Come on, give me some real advice for how to do ministry. But what they did is they said it's like this. It's hook, book, look, took. Maybe, it might be kind of popular. Anyone ever hear of that? Hook, book, look, took. When you're leading a Bible study, when you're preaching, think of hook, book, look, took. And, you can already think of it. So the other day, I'm talking with Matt, who wants to start a Bible study, and he's giving some ideas, and I'm like, have you ever heard of a hook, book, look, took? And the minute he heard it, he's so much better than me because he's like, I get it. Didn't even have to explain. He's like, hook, yeah, I like to hook them in. Create interest. Book is you open up the Bible. Look, you talk about the Bible. You look at what you're talking about. And then took is your takeaway. He rattled it off, and he's like, that is perfect. That is exactly it. So now he's going to use it. And here's something that I thought was cheesy, something I thought was kind of useless 15 years ago, and for the last 15 years I've been using. I wonder if there's going to be Bible studies in heaven, and I'm going to be going back to, okay, what is my hook? What is that opening question going to be? And I'm going to be using these things. What skills that you currently possess that might be useful in the next world, in the next age? Some things may not be. I don't know. If you're a doctor, maybe there may not be any need for doctors. But probably a lot of things we do now, could it be that we do them in the future? I was thinking the new, Revelation says there'll be a new heaven and a new earth. We think of heaven as in the clouds, but heaven and earth come together. There's going to be a lot more dirt in heaven than maybe you imagined. A lot more working with your hand. There's going to be cities in heaven. Civilization in heaven, culture in heaven, building in heaven. There's going to be work to do in heaven. And what skills, what character traits that you're working on now? You're working on your patience. Every day you're like, man, I need to be better and more patient. The work you're putting in today, would it? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe God snaps a finger and all of a sudden you're just naturally patient. Or maybe it's a bit of a process that actually continues on. I don't know the specifics, but what I do know is that he says, the new body you get will be dependent on the seed you have now. This current seed is going to continue on. What does that mean for the value you see in yourself? That what you have now will in some way last forever. What you have now, God sees as fitting for his eternal kingdom. I think that's cool. It's something I don't really sit on enough. So that's the already. We already have the seed that will be the body. We already have it. We're already learning and growing in ways that are going to influence the future. Already. But then there's the not yet. So later on he says, so is it with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. The seed is different than the tree. It is sown in dishonor. Dishonor in that culture, as we get weak, as disease or whatever it may be, takes us. But then it's raised in glory. It's sown in weakness. It's raised in power. I just think that's so cool. When we say R.I.P., we don't have to say rest in peace anymore. More biblical R.I.P. isn't rest in peace. It's raised in power. It's sown a natural body. That's what you got now, is a natural body. How the Bible and how the Apostle Paul thinks of your body is as natural. But it will be raised a spiritual body. That's what we get. We get a spiritual body. What is a spiritual body? Does it mean we're going to be ghosts? No, because it's still a body. If I said that, I have a wind boat, if I said that I'm going to go out on a wind boat, I don't know if that's an actual term. I've never heard of a wind boat, but you're not going to think of a boat made of wind, most likely. You're going to think of a boat that's being propelled by the wind, that's being carried along by the wind. And what Paul imagines is that our bodies right now are just natural compared to the bodies we're going to have that will be carried along by the Spirit, empowered by the Spirit. And what's crazy to me is I thought right now we're empowered by the Spirit and we're indwelt by the Spirit. I thought right now it's the Spirit who gives us every breath. But it's like as if, you haven't seen the body you're about to have, because the body you're about to have is going to be so much more filled with this Spirit of God. It's going to be itself a spiritual body. So there's already, not yet. We get an upgrade to our body. We don't have that upgrade just yet. So Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Theologians will be real touchy with this. They say, don't call it a resurrection. Lazarus wasn't resurrected from the dead. He was more like resuscitated from the dead. Because if Lazarus had diabetes when he died, he still has it when he's raised. Jesus, on the other hand, was resurrected, which means, what happens with Jesus? He appears. We don't even know. Does he walk through walls? Does he teleport? He appears. Like some crazy stuff. He floats around, and then just kind of hovers up into the clouds. This is a spiritual body. We're going to be given a spiritual body. And the only spiritual body we have to go off of is Jesus' spiritual body. I think we're going to be able to fly. I think we're going to be able to teleport. Like, imagine a body that's so led by the Spirit. What in the world? What in the world? We're going to be raised in power. There is an upgrade we're all getting. So, show of hands, how many of you guys are familiar with C.S. Lewis, writer of Chronicles of Narnia? How about who's the writer of Lord of the Rings? Tolkien? How do you say it? Tolkien? So you know that they were friends, right? They're both professors. C.S. Lewis has a conversation with his friend, and he's thinking about fairy tales. Stories like Peter Pan and maybe Beauty and the Beast. And he's like, he sees this message beneath these stories. And he is kind of troubled by the fact that his soul, he can recognize, his soul longs for the joy and the beauty and the glory of these fairy tales. But he's like, I'm an atheist. Mud creatures, and we're just going to go back to the mud. Like, that's all we are. And Tolkien, he says to his friend, he says, but what if these stories point to a bigger story? What if, he tells Lewis, what if, on a physical level you feel hunger, and the hunger you feel points to the fact that there's food in existence. When Ivy was born, one of the things that amazed me and freaked me out was like, will she know how to eat? Will she know she's supposed to eat? And sure enough, when she was born, she felt hunger and she knew she was supposed to eat. We feel a hunger for food, but we also feel a hunger for something more. And it's like these fairy tales, these magical stories give us a glimpse of this something more. Peter Pan. Man, maybe humans were meant to fly. Maybe we were meant to never grow old and to live forever. Beauty and the Beast. Maybe true kindness can transform another person. And when you look at all these stories and you say, man, maybe it actually is pointing to something grander, something purer, something more awesome, but something more real than what we think is real in front of us. C.S. Lewis has this conversation, and 2 weeks later, he writes to a friend, he says, I just became a Christian. Fairy tales is the longings. It's this I want it to be true. I want it to be true before you come to believe. And that's what happened with C.S. Lewis, is that there's this not yet, these longings for something more. When Lewis realized it, he's like, I'm in. I'm sold. This future for us is gonna be way more amazing than what we deal with now. Seeds and trees. Some things are going to continue on. Other things are going to be so much more spectacular that we have to look forward to. And so, what do we have here? For the perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. Things are going to be different for us. They're going to be the same. We're putting on new clothes, but they're going to be different. How does Paul end this? Or when the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come to true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. There it is. Therefore, my beloved friends, this is how he ends a pretty long chapter on resurrection. Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Okay, so we talk about the resurrection. Like, we're not just going to be floating around in the clouds. We're seeds that are going to become trees. Some stuff will stay, some stuff will go, some stuff will change. And he says, because of this, therefore, be steadfast, immovable, abounding in the work of the Lord. So something of what Paul had just got done unpacking says we should be given motivation now for the work we do today. This is what it is. Why? Because what we do now is not in vain. N.T. Wright talks about it like this. He says, we are building a cathedral. So he'll go to these massive cathedrals that took 200 years to construct, and imagining some mason worker who has spent his entire life working on just one section of that grand building. He says, this is what it's going to be like. It's going to be like we spent our lives working on one section of this grand building, this grand kingdom that's going to be revealed. And we can, on that day, go out and we can point up to it and say, there it is. That was my contribution. He says, because of the resurrection, we have hope to continue to work now. Because we will be resurrected, we have meaning in our work. What we do now matters for eternity. What we do now really, truly is going to stand. It's going to last. So be steadfast, immovable, unshakable, abound in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. What's he saying? He's saying, if you want strength today, you need hope for tomorrow. If you want direction today, purpose for today, gain some clarity for tomorrow. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to use your imagination this week, every day this week. Maybe put a little alarm or something. And before you start your day, before you get out of bed, I want you to think of a couple things, maybe one thing even, that you're going to do that day. What are you going to work on? Who are you going to see? And I want you to imagine how that might relate to eternity. Okay? And maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. So tomorrow, I might be painting. Hopefully not tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be done today. But if tomorrow I paint, I'm like, maybe I'm going to be painting in eternity. I think so. It's pretty relaxing. I can do it. Think about the people you'll see tomorrow. Who are you going to run into? Think about that. You might be friends with them a lot longer than you think. Maybe a lot longer than you really hope for. So get it right now. Figure out how to get along now. Man, let's use our imagination. I think as we do this, what you're going to do is you're going to have a much, much different, you're going to transform the way you see every little task, every little part of your day. And you're going to hopefully get this steadfast, immovable, abounding in the work of the Lord. You're going to see that what you're doing now matters, and it's the work of the Lord. It's not just coming to church that's the work of the Lord. It's Monday through Saturday is the work of the Lord, because you are building a kingdom. Do you know God lives not just here in these walls, but he owns all of it. And he's restoring all of it. And everything you can imagine, there's not a square inch that God doesn't touch. Your work matters on for eternity. Your current grit is going to bring your future glory. You're planted a seed, and your seed will become a harvest. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for all these promises and all this hope that you've given us. God, we praise you. We honor you. God, this is so much more than what we deserve. God, thank you that you have recruited us for a job, for a vocation, God. I pray in this room, God, some of us have the wrong view of work. We see work as